Okay, so well, thank you so much for coming. We have an hour. I'm gonna take an hour of your time because I've got so many questions that I wanted to talk with you about. But I wanted to start from the beginning because I guess I think it makes sense to start amazing stories from the beginning. So the first question that I wanted to ask you is, how did music get into your life?
I don't know. I think I was brought up in the 70s. My mum and dad were really into music, and we used to have records in the house all the time. So the big things that we used to listen to were things like Buddy Holly, and Fleetwood Mac was massive, Elvis, the Beatles, Rolling Stones. So Bee Gees. We had constant play at home. And I was always into listening to this kind of music at home and doing performances and dances with my sister for my parents. They always looked particularly bored. I think there was a real moment for me. My dad was a security guard at Wembley Stadium and Arena, and my whole childhood. And I think I was about 6, and I went to see ABBA, and we saw Super Trooper. And I remember being on my dad's shoulders, and I was one of the kids that got called up onto stage to sing Thank You for the Music. And it literally, I think from that point onwards, I don't know, I was activated. I just loved live. So yeah.
I mean, to be honest, that experience must have that experience just sticks to your mind, and it doesn't never leave.
Yeah. I was never I never really wanted to be I did have a go at singing at one point, but I never really wanted to be an artist, and I never really wanted to be friends with artists. I just wanted to be backstage or in a live setting. It was always something that it was definitely because I was always at Wembley Arena watching shows throughout my whole childhood. I used to go to things like Prince every single night he played at the arena after school in my uniform, so I could watch the show and then go home with my dad in the car afterwards. And I saw so many acts in the late 70s, 80s, early 90s, whether it be, I don't know, Tina Turner, Luther Vandross, Tears for Fears. I mean, the list is absolutely endless. Wembley was in its heyday, and I literally used to go on multiple nights, watch these bands, and I just had to go. While doing my homework, literally sitting there. Yeah. Doing my homework, watching the bands. It was just like, you know.
I was going to say, not everyone has the chance to actually do math homework in front of Prince. Sorry.
Yeah. It was. I didn't really understand that even at that young age, the spectacle, or how mighty Prince was. I think it was he had the red Corvette on stage. It was just amazing. Yeah, I was very lucky. I don't know. It was just the universe put me in that spot, didn't it? Yeah,
that's amazing. So then the universe said that you had to be in this industry. Somehow you had to be in it.
It was quite strange because I'd got a scholarship to a private school, and it was pretty academic. I was a bit of a square, but I had this other side where I was always going to gigs, and I really, in my mind, so I wanted to work in music, but I didn't know how. I didn't know anyone in the music industry. My dad was, an events guy. And I started to just ask my dad to introduce me to people. And so I think I was about 14 when I met Barry Marshall, who was a big promoter in the UK at the time. He didn't give me a job, though. I did try. And I remember being 15, meeting Simon Moran, who runs SJM Concerts now, and having a chat with him. And then a few years later, I was working for the Levelers, and he was their promoter, and he was like, I met you at Wembley. But yeah, but I didn't have any help to get into the music industry. So I did my A-levels, I got into uni, and I got into a very prestigious university, first child of a working class family to pull it off, and just didn't want to go, just wanted to work in music. So I was told quite strongly if I wasn't going to uni, I needed to get a job. So off I went, and believe it or not, there was an advert in a magazine called Miss London, which was a free newspaper for a studio assistant. And I applied. It was in a private recording studio in West Hampstead. And the lady that employed me remained my best friend to this day.
Amazing. Wow, I love it. And how old were you when you started working at that studio?
17.
17. Oh, that's amazing. Like, and since then you just started going like getting into like different kind of music, or was like the recording studio, was it specifically for one genre, or
it was a private studio, so it was rented to like producers. So it was quite old school at the time. So the guy that owned the studio used to be involved with the BBC for the BBC Choirs competition. And then I think while I was there, because I was only there about a year and a half, there was Alan Parsons and Eric Woolfson, the guys behind Pink Floyd, were in. And so kind of got to know them. And that was the days before digital. So we had these 8-track tapes that I used to have to drive from the studio in West Hampstead to Abbey Road Studios. And I became really good friends with the head engineer there. And I used to drive in one of their cars, which was usually a really fab car. And then I just passed my test, and then I would drop the tapes off, and I became friends with a guy that was like the studio manager or something. And he used to take me on tours in Abbey Road. So I used to get to go into Abbey Road as well. And I didn't even then, I didn't even understand how important Abbey Road was. I was just going to this place called Abbey Road. It's only in later life that I realized that's where the Beatles recorded. And I just didn't even connect the dots. I was just in this mad world of, I don't know, just being in the music biz. I was so excited to have got a job in the studio. And proved my parents wrong, of course.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It was I was very young, very innocent, but it was a different time in the music industry then. There was lots of jobs around, and you could flip from job to job. People weren't so scared about job security. You could just leave a job and then ring someone up and say, I want to work for you, and they'd either give you a job or they wouldn't. So, it was a different time.
Definitely. And what tip would you give to someone who actually wants to start right now? Because the times are different. So, and especially it's COVID. So
yeah, I mean, right now it's a very difficult world to navigate. We've got no shows going on. I mean, records are still selling. I mean, if you're into recorded music, getting a job in a record company could be a good thing to do. If there are opportunities around at the moment, because I know there's a real freeze on employment at the moment for young people, isn't there? But I mean, I think the key is that the music industry will be back. And when it is, the appetite for it is going to be enormous. So I do think that there are going to be jobs in the future. There just aren't going to be that many around right now. Because as soon as we are able to work again in live or run at full force, the appetite is going to be so enormous that people will scale up pretty quickly. There will be jobs around again, and probably hopefully at the end of this year, maybe into 2022. So I would say between now and then, what could you be doing? Well, you could be having blogs, you could be building your network. I mean, it's so hard, isn't it? Because everything we know at the moment, going to gigs, that's where you meet people, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, open minds as well.
No gigs. I mean, I think it's really good at the moment to be across lots of things, so you're aware about what's going on in the music industry, and there's lots of organizations that you can tap into. I'm quite electronic, so AFEM is the Association for Electronic Music, which I'm on the advisory board of, and that's a great organization that's constantly pumping out up-to-date information of the state of what's going on relevant to our business. Being aware of what's relevant to our business gives you basically some insight into the struggles that we face, but also you would learn loads just looking at that. So you've got an understanding of the status of the music industry at the moment. There's another organisation which is a bit more of a trade body in the UK, which is called NTIA, Nighttime Industry Association. They're doing great work. Sign up to join their newsletter, and you'll receive updates about what's going on with visas and Brexit and insurance and all this sort of stuff, which is relevant to live. And I'm pretty sure that there'll be many other kind of industry related things that you could tap into, whether it be IQ magazine or anything like that, where you could just stay abreast of the issues that we face as an industry right now. And I'm pretty sure that would give you an opportunity to understand the business a lot more, even if you didn't know anything about the music business.
So you would say that the best thing that you can do right now is just keep yourself updated, keep like watching in Google and music.
Education, you know, right now, what else could we be doing but trying to learn new skills, or to improve on the skills that we have, or to expand our minds a little bit, or learn a little bit about an industry, especially if we're interested in working in it. And it wouldn't hurt if you want to work at a label to understand all of the acts that they've signed and who they represent, same as agencies looking at people's rosters, looking at different agents and who they've repped, you know, and who they, or artists that you like. And then I think when I was younger, I was really obsessed by lots of different artists. And I was always really fascinated with who the manager was, who the agent was, you know, and I used to sort of build in my mind these little, but then I'm a bit nerdy like that, it was before the internet and email, and I still managed to find out that there was a book. Oh my God, what was it called? There was like a directory that used a hard copy, and you'd be able to look up the manager of this act. And, you know, I used to like form little webs of like who's in the team.
Like connecting the dots, right?
Yeah, so I was aware of who the manager was and who the label was and who the publisher was. That kind of information is relevant when you're an agent and you're trying to sign artists, if you know who the people in the artist's life is, and you have you either have a relationship with them, or you understand what their reputation is, who else they represent, what else they've worked on. Intel. It not only is it a discussion point, but it's also good to have this stuff at your fingertips.
Definitely,
in terms of, you know, understanding the business that you want to work in. I mean, there's no shortcuts. So, I mean, I meet a lot of young people that want to work in the music industry because they have some kind of warped idea that it means that they get to hang out with their favorite artists. And I actually find that quite frustrating, because I've never worked in the music industry so I can hang out with artists. I've worked in the music industry because I wanted to be part of a machine that made things happen, whether it be with releases, or it was creative, what we were trying to promote, but I wanted to be a cog, a wheel in the machine of making things happen. Yeah,
I think it's really interesting. And now that we're talking about like these roles, I wanted to get a bit more into what does it mean to be an agent.
Well, I mean, the basics of what I do is I'll sign an artist who wants to work live, whether it be a DJ or a live band. And usually alongside releases, we will plan a strategy which starts them at the very, if they're not an established act, how to build a story, how to book them from a very low level to build them up to a bigger level. From that, to create a story with the fan base that ties in with the press and the promotion, ultimately being in charge of their global touring strategy is what I do. So ultimately, then I'll ring up my network of promoters, do deals with promoters, you know, sell these artists, ultimately a salesperson selling these artists, how good they are, which is, again, another reason to have a story. You know, most of my job, in order to hook promoters, to make them want to work with the acts, is enthusiasm. Like, if I love something so much and I'm able to tell a story to a promoter and I can make them buy into this, oh, and then this happened, and then they're so good, and have you heard this song? And, you know, being so enthusiastic about the artists that I represent, it's infectious. And people will buy into that. I mean, obviously, 30 years into my career, when I was a young agent, I would spend days, weeks, months trying to sell acts to promoters, and often being ignored because I was like the young whippersnapper. And, you know, eventually my enthusiasm would win and people would give me a punt, and they would enjoy giving a young agent a chance on an act that they believe in. But now, obviously, I have a lot of relationships with people where we've had a lot of success together, where I've rang them up about an act, and, you know, I'm like, this act in 2 years' time is going to be huge. So there's a lot of goodwill for, you know, me being enthusiastic for artists. And promoters will like often book my artists because if I believe in something and I'm working on it, it does mean that it should be quite successful.
Yeah, But you also need to have that trust in the artist as well, because sometimes you can say, yeah, this artist is going to be amazing in 2 years time, and then they like you need to have that trust. You have like that trust in your artists.
Well, if I sign someone, I have to believe in them. Well, or I know that they will be successful, and I still have to believe in that. So when I was a younger agent, for me, it was all about the music, like it still is. Who am I kidding? So I love hearing something and being able to say that is going to be a #1 record, and then trying to sign the act. That's like one of my favorite things is breaking artists from the ground up and hearing something before anyone else has heard it, and then spending months trying to convince everybody else that it's as good or it's going to be as successful. Trust in the artist. Well, often by the time you want to work at an agency like CAA, you know, there has to be some kind of mutual agreement that CAA is a serious agency. If we're going to put the work in, then you need to also want to do the work, and you want to be part, like you want to be on that trajectory. Serious stuff. Time is everything. So the amount of time you put into the act, you know, sometimes you don't get the return on the time that you put into artists, and that's just the way it goes. But ultimately, my most successful relationships with artists have been the ones where they're pretty much driving the car, and I've got the map, you know. It's kind of like, you know, they're certainly driving the car. They're as driven as I am.
That is actually a really good description. I love that. I really love that. Yeah. And when you're working with such successful acts, and you were mentioning before that sometimes you have to sell them, you have to like talk with the promoter, you have to tell their stories. Is it easier working with like successful acts because you have to tell the story differently, or you have to like maybe tell?
Well, once an act has had sort of quite strong record success or has sold out big venues or whatever, then it's a slightly different conversation, because you're aware of the value of the artist. So you know that the artist will attract a certain number of fans. Well, you don't know, but you know your experience. So it means that you can kind of attach a value to an artist where you can say, I know he will sell out Brixton Academy. So you're aware that your artist is worth maybe 4,000 tickets in every market, and you can book the tours accordingly. It's a different conversation when you've got an artist like that, especially when you've got an act that's a headliner of a festival. You know, it's because the promoter wants that artist to headline because it will attract an audience and sell a certain number of tickets. It's not like you're trying to convince anybody that the act needs to be on the festival. And a lot of the time, you can be ringing promoters saying, do you want my artist to headline? Or they will be coming to you asking you for your artist to headline their event because of the value that your artist brings.
So, yeah, I understand. And well, I wanted to talk a bit about as well the situation in the music industry, and especially in the electronic scene right now, with the government's rulings, the COVID-19 and all of that. So how do you think was the government's reaction to the pandemic, and how did it help or not help the electronic music scene?
Well, it's been appalling. I mean, the bottom line is there's lots of industries that are being not very well supported by their governments. And it's very interesting. We've kind of discovered that most of the ministers in the UK government, and I can only talk about the UK government, don't really understand electronic music, don't really understand the value that our business brings to our country in terms of jobs or education or taxes. And they also don't understand what an amazing export electronic music has been for the UK from the late 80s, and ultimately been part of one of the principal countries that was responsible for creating the global scene that exists now. And it is something that we should be proud of. And there are a lot of ministers that imagine a nightclub to be Annabelle's in London, where people bring fireworks to your table with £500 bottle champagnes in, and that is their sole experience of clubs. They're not aware of, the landscape that is provided by, pretty much I suppose, rather than it being a middle class art form, it's kind of a working class. You know, anyone can learn to DJ or write electronic music in their bedrooms to begin with. It's very accessible. It's a rite of passage for most young people to go clubbing as a first sort of step out. As a young person, I'm going clubbing with all my friends. And in the most part, what we've created is a business that's pretty safe. You know, we've had to, because otherwise we would have been closed down. So, you know, we've got a situation where, you know, thousands, if not millions of young people go out to electronic events every single weekend. And, you know, very few people are dying. It's a safe environment to go to, and it's a unifying event, and it brings so much, not only to them in terms of community, but also to the wider community in terms of taxis, hotels, cafes, kebab shops, you know,
and fried chicken shops.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, it's all people don't think about this stuff. They think about raves and how awful they are and what happens at raves and all the rest of it, but then they don't actually think about what these kind of events bring to the community and the jobs that are created by it, you know. So and people in dance music have to be very professional. So if we were a bother, if we'd had all the license events that have run for the last 20 years, if we'd been a bother to the authorities for the last 20 years, there's no way we would have got the licenses. The reality is that we work with the people that we need to work with to provide safe events for young people to attend and make an awful lot of money for the UK economy.
No, I agree 100%, especially with the fact that the electronic music scene in Britain has in the last few years, like in the last few decades, it's exploded, and it's such a important scene for Europe and for America, and it's just it's just so important, and yeah, and sometimes just, I
mean, you have to be pretty basic with the government, and so where you're saying this is how much money is generated by this industry. And when we collectively added all of hospitality, nighttime and live together, we worked out that it's the 5th biggest GDP in the UK. So, and what we've seen is a systematic decimation of our business by the government. So if you're the 5th biggest earner in the country, biggest income stream, and the government aren't supporting you, we've got seriously something's weird going on that you wouldn't. Meanwhile, fishing industry, which they fought so much over due to, you know, warped sense of sovereignty and the UK madness. Sorry, I'm being political. Try not to be political in interviews. No. Won't mention the T word, but you know, that I don't think it's even worth more than £1 million a year or something. You know, it's just ridiculous that. But then you see with conversations with ministers, they really do not understand the benefits of supporting our industry. They don't see it as a culture, and we have to step back in all of this, and we have done, and realize that's probably down to us, because we've been so self-sufficient that we've never had to engage with government. We've never had to speak to anyone. We've just got on with it. So now we are in the process, me and many others behind the scenes have formed a government think tank. We're going into government. We're going to start educating the government on the reality of this business and what it means to our economy and also to our culture, and also try and establish it more make it seen more as a culture across DCMS, the Ministry of Culture, so that if ever something mad like this happens again, which it might, but also, you know, when all the grant money was divvied up, you could see that predominantly, unless we'd done what we had done in the last 6 months of being, you know, with all the campaigns and the hashtags and everything that went on in the music industry to try and galvanize our audiences to support us, to realize that we needed some support financially from the government. And ultimately, the money that they're giving out is our money. It's not the government's money, it's taxpayers' money. That, you know, 60, 70, 80% of it was going to middle class arts. So, you know, opera and ballet and all of these kind of scenarios. And it was because that's how they see it. So we need to address that, which is what's going to be happening in the next few months. We're going to attempt to do that so that we get taken, I don't want to use the word seriously, but we actually just educate a bit more so people are aware about the value of our business to the UK economy. I keep saying that, but that is ultimately what we need to do.
Got it. And do you think it's an advantage to have like advocates, like people within the music industry, like artists who have access to loads of different people because of the followers that they have in social media and all of that? Do you think it's an advantage for all of this, for the movement?
I have to say it was a bit of a slow uptake from a lot of the artists. A lot of people didn't want to be seen to be political. It's why we didn't see a lot of the major players coming on board. Eventually we did see, but it took a long time. And I think that people were very scared of being, you know, obviously we've got a culture in the UK where you knock people down constantly. Even before cancel culture, it was very much part of the UK culture to criticise people whenever they kind of stuck their head above the parapet, like, ooh. And so the way I look at it, and obviously, given the choice, I wouldn't be negotiating with the current party that are in power. I've spent my whole life being very political and fighting a lot of the laws that they've tried to bring in. Obviously 25 years ago, as part of a campaign trying to stop them, you know, stop raves and big parties and the right to silence and all the rest of it. I mean, I've always kind of fought the T word, the Tory party. I've said it. And I wouldn't choose to be negotiating with them directly, but I think the way I've tried to frame it for artists is to say that we're just dealing with the people that are currently in charge. It's not political, it's just negotiating with whoever happens to be in charge to try and improve things. I think, yeah, I agree. I think it's very important that we engaged our audience. And so not only in an electronic world, but in a live world, you know, there are millions and millions of people that are engaged with these artists. And if it was a case of people just saying, could you fill in this petition or share this hashtag, I really struggled initially to see how that was being political. All it was doing was trying to add a little bit more pressure on the government to be a little bit more, give a bit more money to music, contemporary music and electronic music. And it worked. It did work. We did get a bit more than we expected in the end, than what was predicted. And there's been so many people that have worked tirelessly to improve the situation. People like Michael Kill from NTIA has been, like, you know, insanely helpful to his community of venues and promoters and the electronic industry. So, you know, and it has made a massive difference. There's been a win recently. I'm sure you read that the insurers were refusing to pay out for business interruption insurance. And he was one of the people with NTIA and his team at NTIA that basically went to the High Court, and they won 2 days ago. So now the insurers are going to have to pay out for interruption insurance, even though it's COVID. And there's no appeal. That is it now. So there's going to be there's been a lot of businesses that can't be saved, but a lot of businesses now this is going to really help them hang in there for another 6 months so that we have venues to come back to. Because, you know, at one point we were facing 50% of the venues in the UK were going to disappear. And
I think this is going to be really, really impactful, especially for grassroots venues and for emerging talent. Like,
yes,
where emerging talent nurtures, where they come out, like where we see actually the future of the music industry. So what do you think that's going to be the impact like?
I mean, I came from the rave scene, and it was obviously very illegal and very Wild West in the late 80s and early 90s. And, you know, we cobbled and created a scene which was about young people wanting to be together, listening to melodic beats. And it was, you know, illegal until we had to go licensed. And I think there's always going to be people that are going to find a way, if they're so inclined, to get their music out there. I do worry that it will be unlicensed events over the next 6 months to a year, when we've got a lack of outlets for people to attend. I honestly, I think if we can hang in there a bit longer, when everything comes back, whenever that may be, I haven't got a crystal ball, the demand and the appetite's going to be so big. And if people, if the governments were making sure that businesses could just hang in there, then we could scale up super quick again and just get moving again and start paying taxes and earning money and employing people and fixing what COVID has created, which is, you know, a terrible financial mess for most countries and most economies. So that's why it's worth being one of, you know, a group of people that are trying to push for more support to make sure that we are, like, you know, the fight is worth having if it means that we can save as much as we can. We obviously can't save everyone and everything. And, you know, I'm just going to be clear that it's not just me. There are many people behind the scenes doing everything they can to help as many people as possible. And I feel like I could be doing way more. I mean, I actually have a day job as well as doing all this stuff. So, but I think I've lost the trail of what I'm trying to say, but I'm just saying, I think if we can just hang in there a bit longer and we can galvanize as much financial support as we can from wherever, then I think as soon as that starting block, that gun goes, boom, let's go. As long as we've got some kind of infrastructure, it will grow, it will build back up quite quickly, even in the face of a recession, because the rave scene was created off the back of the 80s, which were savage recession in the UK. I grew up in that time, mass unemployment, terrible time with the unions being dissipated, and the Tory government attacking the coal miners and all the rest of it. It was a really strange time, and off the back of it, we created pretty much a huge dance music scene. So I honestly believe out of adversity comes great music, and, you know, young people, that energy. I sound old saying this. I'm imagining myself at 17 right now, but just wanting to be together and wanting to, you know, share an experience of music. It's going to be, there'll be raves on a Monday morning, won't there?
Oh yeah,
we were laughing.
Sure.
Yeah, we were laughing today, and we were just like, they should just open Berghain 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They should just do, that's what, from September the 1st, they should just announce that's what's happening, and everyone would just fly in and go to Berghain. I mean, I think they'd end up with a lot of very, you know, maybe dead people. You imagine going to Berghain for longer than a day. I mean, it just, but yeah, you know, that's what should happen. It should be 24 hours. I mean, it used to be a bit like that. Well, I used to go out on a Thursday and probably arrive home on a Monday morning in the early night, and it was just club, party. So if it goes back to that, you know, yeah, could be fun.
I always wondered about that, about like raves that go along from like Thursday until Monday. What do you eat? Like, do you guys go out to eat, bring the food in, like then come back?
I don't think you eat much, and that's all I'll say.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think I used to be 7 stone in those days, so, you know, I was a lot thinner than I am now. So yeah,
fair enough.
Lots of dancing.
Now that we were talking about like the industry staying afloat, so we can swim again, I think this is very related to mental health as well, which I wanted to touch a bit on this, because I think it's something that with the pandemic and all of that, some people have had a really tough time, especially in the music industry. So from an agent, from your perspective, how important do you think it is to keep in touch with your peers, to keep in touch with your friends, with your colleagues, and try and keep?
And I'm lucky in that I live in a house with 2 teenagers, so the day-to-day stuff of keeping them organized and them not complaining too much, and meals and organization and all the rest of it definitely keeps me distracted. Obviously I have a massive roster, so I'm speaking to my clients all the time, so I have that communication, and also I've been very busy with my activism and my campaigning. So I'm actually, I think, super busy. So I have a lot of interaction with people, but I do think it's, you know, talking to people on Zoom, it's great. And obviously Friday night, I hadn't spoken to my best. I've got 4 really close girlfriends from my, from being young. We were on Zoom for 5 hours. I don't know what we were talking about, but it was just like,
yeah.
And it's because we're not together, we can't create memories. But I still don't think it's the same as face to face. So I have colleagues that have been on their own for a year in their flats doing what I'm doing, but they're on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's tough.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's tough. And I'm seeing a lot of children. My daughter's age 17, 18, they're struggling quite madly with mental health issues. They're a bit of a lost generation at the moment. They didn't do their exams, they were let go from school.
Mm-hmm.
They might not be doing their next set of exams. They've got doing all this virtual learning. And I think when you're super young, you just need to be with other young people, don't you?
Yeah.
My age.
In that, at that age, my brother, for example, he started university this year, and his experience doesn't have anything to do with mine, that I did it like 3 or 4 years ago.
It's not fun, is it?
Yeah, and it is not good for their mental health. They cannot see their friends properly. They can only go hang out here because we're not in lockdown, but they can only hang out with 1-2 friends maximum, and then you have to be afraid either like if you're gonna like pass the virus to your granny or blah blah blah. And I think it's like so hard on them. Like
on top of it, it's a very anxiety driven world at the moment. We're in a pandemic. It's extremely dystopian. Our governments are struggling to stay on top of everything, so we can take the view that they're not doing it very well, but equally I think we've all come to the realization that none of us are in charge. The virus is in charge, and I
said it better.
And I think someone like me who's like the best problem solver ever, I love solving problems. So someone says you can't do that, I always find a way. I've had to really deal with that because I can't fix this, and that's frustrating.
It's really frustrating,
and it's scary as well. This has really shown the gap, the social divide. It's like people have mortgages to pay, there's no work. Young people, I remember in the early 80s, people would leave university and go sign straight on the dole. Obviously it doesn't exist anymore, universal credit. That's not the dole, it's a different thing. But people would leave university with a first-class degree and have to just get help from the government because there was no work around, unemployment was so big. We may be facing that for the next couple of years as well. So as a young person, what do you do when you see a future that doesn't really kind of show you what's in the future? So that can also affect your mental health as well. And I think we are going to see a lot of young people really struggling. They're also going to be labeled the corona generation. Employers may look at them and regard them slightly differently because they didn't do their exams, they were given grades. There could be a lot of stuff that we're dealing with post corona. I think I think it's in the post necessarily. We could. I think we're all gonna look back on this time with a bit of a shudder.
Definitely, I think this is going to change. Yeah, I think it's going to change us as well.
I hope. I mean, the optimist view is that, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how to change us. Like there are 2 ways of changing people, either in the wrong way or in the bad way. But I think we're going to look back to this and we're going to say, I'm not the same person like I was in the pre-COVID phase.
Yeah, I do worry though that in order to get back to where we were, people are going to forget all of the things that we'd already done, like plastics back. We were almost, just before the pandemic, about to literally niche to some degree plastic use hugely. And plastic bags are back. Plastic on everything is back. I really hope the music industry, we were just about to make plastic-free riders, plastic-free festivals, all of this stuff. I'm a massive proponent of everybody feels like they can't change the world, but if you drop a pebble in the pond, you create ripples. So every little thing you do has an effect. It does. So all of this stuff that we were doing was really positive, and you know, okay, dip in the ocean, but to some degree, if you're doing it in your own little circle, you're making a difference to your circle, which then, so I really hope in the rush to get back to financial stability, to create wealth, that we aren't seeing people throwing out their eco credentials. We're already seeing things like factories in China gone back to the old days of burning coal through the night to get production up again. And equally, in terms of employment and diverse and inclusive workplaces, that everybody keeps up the good work that they were doing before now. All of the, you know, in things that were integral to our developing, you know, better communities, better workplaces for everybody. I hope that we keep up with that in the future, because I think it'd be a real shame to feel like we've gone backwards due to COVID. I almost wish it was, we'd push away even more because of COVID. But I think we will see a lot of businesses and communities just in such a desperate rush to make money that some of that may be put on the back burner for a bit longer, which I think would be a massive shame, because we're already seeing the benefits of COVID on our planet. And in terms of, we're already seeing it. We're absolutely already seeing the fact that there's no planes, less cars, less travel, all of it. We're seeing, I live in London, but I live in a little bit of a villagey type place, and you know, we're seeing seals in the Thames at the moment, and
really?
On a regular basis, and the nature has improved 50%, twofold, because there's less cars on the road and there's a bridge shut and they haven't got the money to fix it, and you know, it's made such a difference to nature. You know,
that's true. I'm also a bit worried, like I'm a bit worried that when we come back really like sudden, so like really fast and full speed, and that might, like, I don't know, make some kind of like, not explosion, but like affect nature really hard, you know. I don't know about that, but
I mean, I'm really looking forward to going back to being as busy as I was with live music. I am slightly trepidatious about it as well. We're talking about this, we're like, oh, when we come back, it's going to be nuts. I mean, I think that's a good thing, that we know already that when we come back, we'll be able to provide live experiences for a lot of people, and with our artists will be the ones doing it. I mean, I think that's positive. That gives us hope. But yeah, it's going to be fast and hard, and I can't imagine me getting up to that speed again at the moment. I probably needed this time off. I was exhausted from working so hard.
Many people in our industry were, and at this point they are like, okay, I think I've rested enough. Let's go back, please.
Yeah. I probably needed to be forced into having sort of a situation where I wasn't on a plane every weekend, or, you know, only getting 6 hours sleep a night and stuff. And, you know, me and many others have spent the last 9 months working on their fitness, their health, and doing all of this stuff. So probably added a few more years onto my life. So there's a positive of this.
Okay, yeah.
No, I think so. As long as I don't catch COVID, yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's a very important thing to do. So I wanted to talk a bit about diversity in the electronic music scene, because I think it's a really important topic at the moment, and I think we should talk about this.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think actually the tide has turned. There's still an awful lot of things that need to be fixed, and we've seen a lot of stuff happening over the summer with various different stories about what's happened, unfortunately, to women in the last 20 years. And, you know, I concur, some of these things happened to me as well. So, you know, I think the business has changed. We're starting to see a lot more headline female DJs on lineups. It's absolutely fine to say to promoters, where are the women? Where are the people of color on your lineups? And people are actually addressing this. And I know in lots of different places is company policy for these things to be happening. We're certainly at the company I work at, got a very diverse workforce across the board. with, I think it's 50-50 men and women now, and I think we're almost there with the diverse workforce as well. So I think these changes, the work that went in, the conversation that's gone on for the last 7 or 8 years at music companies means that things have improved hugely. And I do say this from a place of white privilege. So it's very easy for me to be in this place of, well, yeah, it's easier, we can fix it. And I've never had a problem getting a job. I totally recognize that that's something that I need to address, that I've always been able to walk into anything in my life and sort of create things. And it was easy for me to get a job. And there was, you know, all of this stuff. But I work for a very progressive company that is done its absolute utmost in the last 10 years to address all of the issues that we've just spoken about, and also make our environment as diverse and inclusive as it could possibly be. And I think we've been out there as officers of that company extolling this message for, I mean, I think I started doing a women's panel at IMS in Ibiza maybe 10 years ago, when people were so uncomfortable about it. They were like, why do you want to do that? We don't need to do that. Like, totally, like,
I didn't know about this. Was it?
Yeah, and we, years, I mean, I think it just didn't, it was really hard to do it a long time ago, and we never really could get it to work. And I think at one point we had I mean, it was ridiculous. There was a fight. It was just the weirdest. 10 years ago, this was not on the table. And I was regarded as quite a strange person for wanting to do all these women. No one really understood the point of it. And a lot of the people that were against it are now like proponents of diverse cultures, which is very funny. I won't be naming names. Yeah, you know, the world has changed enormously. And I do feel like we might not be in wider society for sure. If you look at what's been going on in America, etc., there's still so much to do. And like I said, I can only affect change in my near and slightly far environment. So if I can continue to walk the walk and talk the talk and do the best that I can with this, and the company that I work for also doing the same, then we can make a difference in our world and in our environment, and influence people that we work with to do the same. Is that a good enough answer?
No, I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, the world has been a very unfair place if you're of color, or if you know if you're a woman in the music industry, especially. It was hard when I first came into the agent world in the sort of early 90s. It was a world full of white, powerful men who were pretty aggressive and very misogynist. And I think I was told at a very young age, why should you be an agent? You should be an assistant. Many times. I think those days are over. And I think that's a really good thing. And I think the best thing that I've seen happening is that women, including me, have realized that if we don't talk about this stuff, we need to find the confidence in ourselves to talk about these issues. I've spent a very long time now doing this, and it's making a difference. And the more that we all start talking and communicating and building alliances and shining a light on things that aren't right, maybe not cancelling things, but shining a light on things, and, you know, gently, beautifully trying to change things, we are seeing a difference. And the world is improving in the world that I work in, for sure. The rest of the world, there's still a lot of work to be done, of course.
Yeah, there's always work to do. Well, and now we have like 10 minutes left, and I wanted to leave this for, let's say, the future. So okay. I wanted to do a trip to the future and ask you, realistically, how damaged do you think the industry is going to be when we can come back?
I'm really looking forward to doing some touring. I have tours on hold for the end of this year. Who knows if they will happen. I'm a bit worried about the summer.
Yeah,
I'm a bit worried that summer will run. I had previously been advocating that July and August would be okay. I think September is already looking chock-a-block with festivals being moved and stuff. I feel very confident that by 2022 we're going to be up and running again properly. Festivals are going to run as normal. I really want this summer to run. I really want to go to Glastonbury.
Yes, we missed the anniversary last year.
I know, so they have to do it this year, but whatever. But I've been to every single one since I was about 16 years old, which is a very long time. And I think I've missed one in all that time, so 30 years or something. So, you know, yeah, I love Glastonbury, and it's a real beginning of the summer for me. I really love Glastonbury to happen this year, but who knows?
Yeah.
If the UK government keep going and they roll out 24/7 a vaccination plan, and they somehow manage to get the majority of our country inoculated before June, they're saying that's not going to be possible, but they seem to be realizing that it's time now to just pull out all the stops, or otherwise we're going to sink. So maybe they will, and maybe we will start seeing events. I feel confident in some markets in Europe we're going to see shows. You know, Denmark, okay, there aren't that many festivals that happen there, but their population is going to be fully inoculated imminently. They're running as normal. They want a summer. And I think we're going to see other smaller countries, or countries that have pulled it off, Finland probably are going to be like that. It's going to be an interesting time. I feel like the appetite for shows, July and August, I mean, people are desperate, aren't they? Ibiza, all of it. The problem is, if we run too fast and we run a massive event and loads of people get COVID, it will put our business back miles. So I think in that desire to get back and to go again, we need to be very careful, because we were the first to go and we will definitely be the last to go back. If you look at all the government advisors, they are really scared of large scale events. They're really scared of mass gatherings at this current stage. Yeah. But as we also know, these things change. In 3 weeks' time, we could be in a very different place.
Every 24 hours, you just wake up.
I'm very lucky. I work for an amazing company that borrowed a lot of money to keep going, and you know, we've made cuts where we needed to, and I think we're just sitting. We're like everybody else. We're in a holding pattern. We're just waiting, and I think a lot of small agencies and small management companies must be going off to get other jobs now, because there literally is no money. So, but I think all of those people will come straight back to the business as soon as there's money to be made again. Yeah. There's no question. I'm hopeful for the future. My main worry is making sure there's enough venues to work in. But aside from that, we will find a way. We are the most tenacious, entrepreneurial group of people I've ever met in my life. We can do anything. You can do a gig at the Pyramids, or, you know, wherever. We can do it. We can do anything. So I think it's not going to be a problem. We will do things in a safe and legal way, and we will be back. I do worry about illegal events, because there's lots of them going on, and the criminality associated with them. I have a young 17-year-old that's going to some of these things, so I'm seeing the video footage, and it looks way more dangerous than when I went back in the day. So that does concern me, but that's why, as soon as we can go back in a safe, licensed fashion, we will be doing it, and we will be leading the way with it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and one of my last questions, probably my last question, is I wanted to ask you, where do you see yourself in 1 year?
Well, probably working at CAA, trying to make as much money as possible for my clients and for the company, so that we can make up for what we've lost. I mean, my fantasy moment would be living in Ibiza again. And I certainly will be spending, hopefully, this summer there again, if we can get out of the UK. We're currently barred from going anywhere, so we can't get in anywhere. We can't go anywhere. We're not allowed to go anywhere at the moment. I just want to get back to touring again. I want to be in my lovely little gig world of festivals and shows and seeing all my families, all my little wonderful clients and their management teams and everybody associated with live, from the production managers who I love working with to the crew who are always adorable and so good. I mean, world-class crew, every team that I work with. I just want to see, everyone's going to be so pleased to see each other. Oh my God, we're at a gig. Ah! Like, it's just going to be like, everyone's going to be like, oh, like, it's going to be so like running to each other, like, yeah, music playing, you know.
Yeah, music playing and the wind coming at your face, and yeah.
I mean, absence does make the heart grow fonder, doesn't it? And one of the tricks of the trade is to sort of withdraw your artists from the market and then bring them back hard. So maybe this is maybe we all needed to have a little bit of a break to realize how much we love what we do and how much we appreciate the world that we work in, because, you know, being in the music industry is hard work, but it's so much fun.
Yep, that's true. Well, thank you so much, Mary. It was a pleasure having you. Talking to you for an hour. I'm going to leave you now, go with the rest of your work and your kids and everything, and I hope you have a really nice week.
It was really nice to meet you, and thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.